Are you sick of watching your outdoor pot plants die? Cause I sure am. So today I'm going to show you how I converted some outdoor pots into wicking pots. No, not witch pots, wicking pots, to give them a little bit more resilience in the summer heat. I've got enough other stuff going on. I don't want to be guilty about these poor dying pot plants on my front lawn that I have to look at every day. So if you've got a stubborn pot plant or two that could use a little bit of extra care and attention, consider doing this and converting some of your pots into wicking pots. It's a pretty simple process. It doesn't take that long if you've got a few tools around. And if you ask me, a less attention demanding pot plant is a better pot plant. So this is my zone 1. It does get really hot and sunny here. It just doesn't look it today. It's raining, can you tell? Yay! This does get a lot of sun and it gets hot and it gets dry. So the plants that are out here in small pots, especially if they're in black pots, dry out very quickly and they just need a lot of water. This usually hot and sunny patio is where all of the nursery trees are kept while they're waiting to go out onto the property for their forever home. Unfortunately, a lot of these have been waiting here quite a while. I realized that I had almost killed a $60 chestnut tree and a $60 macadamia nut tree, not to mention several others that were really just barely hanging on to life, which is not good because the purpose of a zone 1 is that's the stuff that you pay the most attention to. I'm apparently not remembering to water them enough. We have neurodivergence on this property. What? No. I needed to figure out a way of making them stay alive a little bit better. Also, I had saucers under all of the pots and obviously they still struggled and didn't survive because they just dry out really quickly. So a few of these pots are plastic pots and I realized that they are the perfect examples to turn them into self-watering wicking pots. Many methods of making wicking pots exist. This is just my low effort recycled solution using things that I already had on hand. So how does a wicking pot work? There's a full video on those, which you can see here. Basically, there's a reservoir in the bottom of a pot which holds water. Then there's a layer of some kind of permeable fabric, and then the soil sits on top of that, and the moisture then wicks from the reservoir up through the fabric and into the soils. And there's also a pipe that goes from the top of the pot down into the reservoir, which allows you to fill it with water. And the really important thing with a wicking pot is always to have an overflow so that the water can't get above the reservoir level and get into muddy, sticky soil. So for this project, the materials I used, I had a couple of plastic pots that I wanted to convert. You will need a couple of tools, a drill, some silicone, a milk bottle or some kind of plastic that you can use to plug a hole, some rocks or something to fill the reservoir with, a bit of flexible tube, irrigation hose or old hose works just fine, and your geotextile layer. So step 1 is to make the pot watertight. So these pots already had a hole in the bottom of them, so I cut out a bit of old milk bottle to stick that on top on the inside and siliconed around that. This is better than just siliconing into the hole because the pressure of the water and soil could later just push that silicone plug straight out. So having an actual physical piece of plastic there will stop it falling out later. So that makes a really nice watertight seal. While that dried, I took my irrigation tubing and I measured that so that there was a piece along the bottom and then a little corner joint and then it reached up to the top of the pot. And then I made some holes along the bottom part of this tubing and this will be our water intake. So we can just fill the hose at the top and it will make sure that the water disperses throughout the reservoir at the bottom of the pot. Turns out using a drill directly onto a tiny piece of irrigation tubing is a little difficult. It kept falling off, so I did find it useful to score the spot first with a Stanley knife and then drill the hole after that, which was a much less frustrating experience. Then I had to decide on how deep I wanted the reservoir to be. I kind of just vibed this off the general depth of the pot. 2 of these pots already had like an original sort of wicking reservoir thing in there, so I just based it off of that. But around 8 centimeters is a pretty good height for your wicking reservoir. Basically, the taller you make it, the more water you're going to be able to hold in there. The shorter you make it, the less water, but also it has to do with the depth of soil and what you're going to be planting in the top. So you want to aim for like between 25 centimeters and 40 centimeters of soil on top of this wicking reservoir. Then I got Dad's help to drill the overflow hole at the top of that height of the reservoir. I could have done this myself, I just didn't want to f it up. To fill the reservoir, I used these old pieces of broken pots. This is for my male viewers. This was a great solution because I found all these broken pieces of pot when I was cleaning up this front area and didn't know what to do with them. And then I went, yay, I can get rid of them by putting them in this wicking pot and then give them a second life. You can also use 5 to 7 mil bluestone screenings, which is what we use in the bigger wicking pots. I'll talk about why that might be a better choice a little bit later, but I was just trying to use recycled materials, so this is what we got. I also had some stones left over from our bigger wicking bed build, so I also used those in this extra one that I did. The next step is to put your geotextile layer down. For this, I used human hair from my back. No, it's from my hairbrush. I've been rescuing it from my hairbrush for a while. Hair is a great natural option. The geotextile fabric we use in the bigger wicking beds is a plastic, so don't love that, but I also didn't have enough hair to do the full wicking beds that we did, but I did have enough hair to do a couple of pots, so we went with that. The other thing I used is some old denim fabric. Denim is thicker and takes a longer time to break down than just a general cotton fabric. So that's also a good plastic-free alternative if you don't want to buy a proper landscaping geotextile fabric. Which for a small pot, I recommend you just use what you've got around. That's all I did in the shed, so then it was time to do the final steps, which is filling them up with soil and planting in them. So it's important to make sure that whatever you're putting in the reservoir only goes up to below the hole that you've put in for your overflow, and then making sure that your geotextile layer doesn't cover that hole. So making sure the denim is not across that hole, and also any hair you're using or whatever you decide to use for your wicking layer. Then it was time to wrestle the plants into these pots and fill them up and make sure that they overflow. To fill them up, you can just water them straight from the top, but to make sure that the reservoir gets completely filled, it's a good idea for at least the first one to just put the hose directly into your fill pipe and wait until the overflows. The last very important step is, of course, to mulch the top of the pots. This is useful anyway, even if it's not a wicking pot, just to stop the water evaporating off the top of the pot. But it's especially important in wicking pots because you've got all this water down the bottom and you want it to go into the soil and not just straight out the tree and out the top. Yay! Now I have guilt-free pot plants. I just have to convert all the rest of these now. I'm tired. So some practical considerations to think about when you're doing this is I've used some old ceramic, which I'm not sure if that's going to actually wick up to the soil level if the reservoir is not completely full. The ceramic I use is quite porous, so it's possible that it will. There's also, you know, if it's hot, the water will be trying to like evaporate and warm and move up anyway. But it is a definite that 5 to 7 mil bluestone screenings, like if you're buying something, getting something like scoria or 5 to 7 mil bluestone screenings, which is a much smaller rock, will actually wick up even if there's only a little bit of water at the bottom of the reservoir. So these are a bit of experiment on my part. I just wanted to use up what I had and not have to buy anything else, which I think is very valid in this economy. But I will have to keep an eye on the ones that I just put the ceramic in and make sure that those reservoirs are topped up as much as possible. Some people also think if you just leave the hole open like I did, that it could breed mosquitoes. I don't think that's gonna happen, but I've seen people say that if you're worried about that, or you've got a lot of mosquitoes in your area, you can just cover the inside of that hole with a little bit of fly screen, and that should stop them getting in there and breeding. They'd have to like burrow in and they'd have to really work to get in there. I think there's better options around my place for them to go in there, so I didn't bother with that. Obviously the size of the pot you do this in will affect the size of the plant you can put in there, and also how often you're going to have to top up that reservoir. You can only hold as much water as the size of the reservoir you've made, so it's still going to need consistent attention. I'm just hoping that this will like lengthen the amount of time between my needing to check them / give them a bit more resilience when I go away for a while, or just completely forget that they're there and forget to water them, because I don't want to kill any more expensive plants. It's also possible with planting larger trees in this that their roots will eventually go down and pierce through that hair layer or less likely with the denim layer, but as that breaks down, you will probably end up with roots going down into the reservoir layer if it's a really thirsty plant, and you'll have to sort of take the whole thing apart and start again. But I don't imagine that will happen for a few years, I'm hoping. So doing this has designed this front area a little bit more to suit with my life and habits, which are not consistent, as you may have heard. What? No. I'm hoping this will reduce my mental load, reduce the feeling of guilt that I have killed plants, because nobody likes that, and reduce the need for consistent, constant attention out here. I'm a firm believer that gardening should be joyful and not a quiet loop of failure, because that's very demoralizing for all involved. Seeing those little tubes sticking up out of the pots is making me feel a lot more calm about all of this. Let me know in the comments if you've already made wicking pots, or if you have any ideas on how to convert ceramic pots. I'm a little bit worried about drilling into those to make overflows. Please let me know. Comment, share, like, subscribe, and thanks for watching this video. I'll see you next time. Bye. Yay! Plant-free guilt. Wait. It's the buffering.